All right, welcome everyone to Grand Rapids Comic-Con. Today we're going to be talking about taking your ideas to adventure, writing, crafting, and publishing your own TTRPG adventures. Are you all familiar with tabletop role-playing games? Yeah, all right. Kind of odd if you were sitting here and weren't, but just double checking. So we are going to embark on a journey into the world of tabletop and the games and the art of crafting adventure. So we collectively have a YouTube where we do actual plays and live streams, playing TTRPGs as Tabletop Rocks. Individually, we have a ton of tabletop role-playing experience. I've been playing since 2000, Y2K, when everybody was scared the computers didn't know how calendars would work and that would somehow create the detonation of every nuke. I instead was perusing my brand new 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, being uncomfortably aroused by more creatures than I care to admit. Colin here has been playing TTRPGs for many years, been very involved in tabletop gaming for a long time, has written some adventures. He does a lot in the Morkboard systems. Anybody familiar with Morkboard? No? It's great. It's like a doom metal, super dark, super gruesome tabletop role-playing game. Very fun.
You will die.
You will die. And Nate has more GMing hours than God himself, I'm pretty sure. He runs like 4 campaigns a week, does monthly videos and streams with us, and has had several successful Kickstarters creating his own TTRPG Dungeoneering, and several adventures and a mega dungeon and expansion pack for that. So
sell it. Yeah.
Really sell it. So in our presentation, we're going to be talking about inspiration in writing, the creation of the document, layouts, formats, illustrations. We are going to touch on using AI, which is a bit of a hot button topic. Don't hate us, but we'll talk about it. And then we'll talk about self-publishing as well and getting to share with the community. And for me, I think the greatest thing about TTRPGs is the community. It's a very open, sharing community. So hopefully we can continue on in that vein, share with you all, and help you write fun adventures. We'll also be talking about where to host and share and get into crowdfunding options like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and all that sort of stuff.
I'll make some actual money.
Yeah. Also, we are not trying to sell you anything up here today. We do have some adventures posted. They're all free. They're just free source. Do what you want with. And we have a QR code up here. We're going to be talking a lot about different websites, pros and cons of others, tools that you can use for writing and creating your adventures. Please don't feel like you have to memorize it or write it down. We have a QR code will take you to our website where we have a list of any link that we talk about, any website, and a little description of what it is. So. Also, we're talking about a creative endeavor here. So, the creative process is kind of always in flux. This is our current best guess as to, based on our experience, what we think is going to work really well for you. By the end of the year, some of this might change, as any creative process does. If you've got something that you do different or you prefer, that doesn't mean we're wrong, you're right, we're wrong. Creative projects are always tricky like that. So, where do we start? Ideation in writing. So, of course, we can find inspiration just about anywhere. We can find inspiration in our everyday lives, in media, books, video games. We can also, if you're a member of the tabletop role-playing community, getting involved with Discords and social medias can be a great place. Who is it? Is it Sean McCoy who's doing the D23 stuff right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sean McCoy, if anybody knows, he's a game creator, and at the end of the year, he kind of proposed a project and said, hey, let's everybody create one room of a dungeon per day for the whole year. Then at the end of the year, you'll have a whole mega dungeon built, 365 rooms potentially. So if anybody here is a mega dungeon fan, the end of this year is going to be a great year for you because everybody is making a mega dungeon, including...
Yeah. Partially, yeah. The best part about it is that if you don't want to do it every day, you can kind of be like, well, this room was empty.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing in this room. I did that on purpose.
Yeah. But yeah, the TTRPG community is really great and is full of prompts like that to help you find inspiration. It can be a really great place. I myself am not a mega dungeon person, but that's all right. And then the other thing is like to take notes, you know, in your everyday life as you're going. If you get inspiration, I have a little notes app on my phone. If you have a physical journal, that can be nice. But just keep notes of what you're thinking, things that give you inspiration. Recently, I came across a Instagram post of someone illustrated a cool little goblin. I'm like, man, that little goblin's cool. And just my love of goblins, I was like, oh, you know what? That inspires me. I have an idea, created an adventure. There we go. I'm glad you're doing that because I forgot. Thanks.
It's a team effort.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a great little goblin illustration, created a game off of it, and built from there. And if you'd like to see a great example of how you can have a great bit of inspiration, write a whole game, and then take it to the table and have your players completely derail the one thing that drives your whole game, that actual play's up there. Thank you, Colin.
It's called Mazes,
Yeah.
the Forgotten Vault of Ard. We didn't do anything with the goblins. We banished them immediately.
Yeah, it was my goblins were like the whole driving force of this adventure. We like get through the opening scene, they immediately find a way to just like, no more goblins, they're gone. It's not a part of the adventure. So try your best. You'll probably still have to improvise. So next, you want to define your goals. You know, what do you want to achieve with your story? Is this a thrilling dungeon crawl, a political intrigue, an epic quest, a murder mystery? You know, defining a genre or what you want to accomplish in this game can really help. When we sit down to write, at least if you're anything like me, it's very easy to just kind of start, oh, well, this is a cool idea, and you branch off, and then your game really isn't focused. You don't have a real solid drive or point. So I think before you really get into writing, find your inspiration, and then define, what do I want to accomplish here? Try to keep your game focused at that. And I also think it's okay to lean into tropes. A lot of people are worried about tropes or cliche things. You know, we've had the hero's journey told 100,000 times across stories, right? Like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. It's all just the hero's journey, kind of reskinned. And if you are familiar with Hallmark, they wrote one script 40 years ago. They make about 6 movies a year with no potential end in sight. And now every streaming service is emulating them, right? So now we have Netflix holiday movies and Hulu. And so I think it's okay. If tropes can be really fun in games, especially for new players, let them experience that cliche moment, those tropey characters. It can also be great for your players, if you have new players, to get into character, because they kind of know what to expect, right? We know the trope of the overly rambunctious bard, right? Like, it's easy to get into that character because we've seen that character so many times. And good starting points and prompts. So a compelling opening scene is really what we want to get anyone hooked onto any type of story, even our tabletop role-playing adventures. My favorite prompt and way to open a game is media res. Media res means you open up in the action, something's already happening. A great example of this is Star Wars: A New Hope, right? We open up, you get a little crawl, a little bit of information to start your adventure, and then a spaceship flies over, it's shooting in another spaceship, they get captured, a door gets blown apart, stormtroopers and Vader come rushing in, there's lasers everywhere. So immediately our story kicks off, you're immediately in the action, you're immediately hooked, you're immediately involved and active. I think that's really one of the great ways. And then you can roll it back and give them some more information, slow things down, but that really gets the players involved right away, it gets things moving, and gets everybody into character and progressing the story along.
Yeah, like kind of go off of that, like, you really want to like hook the people first, right? So once they get the big action moment, you're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like, I do like this, and then you can slow it down a little bit after they've already kind of gotten the adrenaline rush a little bit.
Yeah.
Because then you give them a little bit of a cool down period. Like, okay, well, we did have the big guns blazing moment. Now we get to kind of see why that happened or what happens next.
Yeah. And in talking or And in creating our storylines and creating our tropes or cliches, we like to say, don't be afraid to steal like an artist. If you've gone to art school or if you talk to any serious artists, they'll probably tell you that no one has had an original idea for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. And we're all just kind of operating on this shared collective cultural experience of knowing all of these other things. It's impossible for us to have an idea that someone already hasn't had and acted upon, but we can steal like an artist, collect those thoughts, reskin them, present them as your own with your own spin on it. I think it's totally fine to watch Star Wars and be like, man, that was a great opening scene. In my fantasy adventure, I'm going to open it up with the characters traveling in a carriage, and here comes some other carriage barreling down on them. It captures them. You're basically taking the first scene of A New Hope, but you're reskinning it. You're putting your own players, your own spin on it. That's okay. It's pretty hard to have original ideas, original adventures now. Don't rip things off one for one, right? Like, don't have Gandalf show up at the, change some names.
At least don't sell it with Gandalf.
Don't sell it with Gandalf in there. I guess your own homebrew, you can.
Tolkien Estate is notoriously don't do that.
Yeah. If you are doing this for profit, for sale, expect, respect intellectual properties and copyrights. At least give credit at the bare minimum. And so once you have your inspiration, you've kind of developed a storyline. What does a TTRPG adventure need? It probably needs 4 things, is what we commonly see in tabletop role-playing games. We need challenges for our players. We usually see some sort of puzzle. Doesn't have to be there, but they can be nice. Combat encounters and opportunities for role-playing. I think that last one is the hardest one to find, is opportunities for role-playing. Often if you're writing an adventure, you're excited to do it, you're inspired to do it. You want to have control over it and give a lot of detail and in-depth things. But in tabletop adventuring, you really want to keep it kind of sparse, almost more like a
Prompt.
Yeah, like a prompt, to let the GM kind of weave their web of storytelling and magic, and then let the players build the story. So definitely try to keep things brief. Your encounters, your challenges, your puzzles, give the information you need to run it, but try not to direct it, and really try to give the players as much room to interpret and to challenge and to change things as you can. That's, I think, where fun at the table really happens. But that can be hard to write because we're writing it, we're excited, we're into it.
You want to try to avoid a situation where you're writing a story, right? Because the story is really what happens at the table. The story is what players do, what they decide, what they choose, what happens in the game, right? You kind of just want to set the building blocks, like you want to kind of set the stage almost. If you want to use a play as an example, and then let the actors, the players, do the actual fun stuff.
Yeah.
I've heard it described before as kind of like a dolphin, where dolphins can be underwater for long periods of time, which is the players playing the game. But every once in a while, the DM has to have the dolphin flip up, take a breath of air, explain some stuff, and then get right back into the game.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I was talking about role-playing. There's us doing some role-playing. And then lastly, consider the scope of what you're writing. Are you writing this as a one-shot, something to be completed in one quick session? Are you writing a campaign? Maybe you're just doing a down and dirty resource management dungeon crawl. Figure that out before you start writing. It'll save you a lot of time. And again, it's kind of one of those things that'll help keep your game focused. Same with determining, is this a murder mystery or just a hack 'em slash 'em thriller. Figure out those parameters and then do your writing from there. Colin, I'll let you take over creating the actual physical or digital item that you're going to use.
So once you've got your idea and you've started writing, laying it out or presenting it to an audience isn't just about making it look good. It's about making it easy for a GM to run. We're talking about something that's a tool to facilitate the table. So a lot of this advice and stuff that I'm giving you isn't necessarily like, hey, this is how we would do it if we were doing a book or a story. It's kind of about how do we make a tool for someone to use and play. So like thinking of it that way is really going to help. So when we talk about how you lay it out to look, you could use tools that you're used to, maybe like Microsoft Word or whatever, but trying to use Word to lay out a longer book is kind of like a bard using a lute to fight a dragon. Like, sure, that's creative, but it's probably not going to work out very well in the end. Here's some other layout software choices. By the way, this portion's like really nitty gritty, and all of it, again, is on the website, so don't feel like you have to write anything down. There's a lot of the layout software does cost money, but it comes with a whole lot more control and flexibility to make it look the way you want to and function the way you want to. If you've ever tried to lay out anything with graphics in Microsoft Word and make it all look nice, you've probably sworn at your computer a million times an hour. And some of these other software packages just alleviate all of that pain. They all have a cost except for Scribus. The free ones, or the ones like Publisher that might come on your computer, are not as good as Affinity or InDesign, but work with what you got, and the best tool to lay it out is the one you have. So even if you're only going to use Word, I'm not faulting you, just giving you another direction to go if this is something you want to get serious about.
Or find a friend who's really good at layout, because I just make all of my stuff as a Word document and then just send it to Colin.
Yeah, that's another great point. If you're not going to hire someone or you don't have a friend, this is where you go next.
And Colin will work for beer and compliments.
That's true. But yeah, all of the some of the main things, like I said, that control, but like being able to make quick changes. Like we were just laying out an adventure together and they didn't like the headline font that I chose. And instead of going back and having to change it each time, I changed one style in InDesign and all of them automatically updated and everything looked great immediately. Saved me a ton of time. So look at layout software choices if you're going to get serious about it. So you've got your software tool. What do you do next? With these games, like I said, we're not just laying out a book to look good. This is a tool for a GM to use. So if you've run an adventure and you felt like, hey, the way that they put that stat over here, or how the encounters were labeled, or the number, look at that stuff and try and emulate some of the things that worked really well when you GM something else or when you've read through something else. And there's a ton of free stuff on like Itch if you want to just look at the whole breadth and depth of what's out there. A lot of times people, when they do their layouts, they really want to dive deep and emulate the vibes and the style. And then sometimes they veer off into like unreadable and unorganized. And remember, this is about giving someone a tool to be able to run a game from. So you can emulate those vibes and styles, but try to look at what actually works for running a game from. And then go ahead and start emulating that. Yeah?
Have you worked in a medium that is designed to stay digital?
Yeah. So a lot of this stuff, a lot of people right now, it's hard to guess whether they're going to be digital only or in person and want to print it out. Because even people playing in person might prefer to have it printed out. So we will get to a slide in a minute that's a little bit more about format. But what you end up doing for printing really can work for digital people too. But I'll cover that in just a second. That's a great question. Okay, so you've got your layout software. You figured out, okay, this is the headline copy and the body copy and how I'm going to organize it. And now you want to start talking about graphics or maps. If you want to make maps digitally, there's a great tool called Dungeon Scroll, which is kind of what we use almost exclusively. And it's really great because you can have a lot of different styles. As you can see, these could be very different games that these maps are made for. And it's free to use for personal use. And I think the guy asked you to throw him a couple bucks if you're going to have a paid thing. And you can look at that website. Again, it's linked if you want to use a digital service like that. There's also a guy who goes by Paths Peculiar online who has these tutorials that teach you how to hand draw maps. And they're really great tutorials that are free. And all three of the images you see here come from his different tutorials. And I've done them, and I am terrible at drawing. And mine looked good at the end of the day. So I was really excited about that.
They were not bad.
Yeah, they worked.
Really pretty good.
I put them in an adventure that I published. It was great. And the tools needed are really minimal. As you can see, these are black and white. You can take it up the next level. But even just hand drawing it and then getting it in the computer is really easy. So you don't need to be afraid of map making. It's easy with these two tools. It's kind of fun and cathartic to do the physical ones. Okay, so you've got maps and stuff. Maybe you don't want to do the graphics, or you don't want to try your hand at drawing, or you don't want to make the maps, and you want to hire somebody. Where do you start? Well, you're at a con right now with a whole place called Artist Alley. Go talk to those people. Grab some of their business cards. Start talking to them. They might be your best resource to actually be able to think through an idea. The next place I would look is Instagram. There's a lot of people doing cool stuff on Instagram, and you'd be surprised how easy it is to find someone to work with. That's how you met the person who did your illustrations, right?
Yeah, so I for my game, Dungeoneering, I found an artist that I really liked. He had a style. It was like black and white, kind of old school sort of style, and I really like jived with it. And I talked to him on Instagram, and like, you know, it's just direct one-to-one conversation, and we really hit it off. And he was like, "Oh, it sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I'd love to do it, man. Sure, you know." And then we just went from there. And he's done 3 of my books now, and it's been awesome. And I actually have a friend now. I like know him now.
There you go.
Like, you know, it's very cool.
Okay, you don't want to pay anybody, but you want to still get art. Up next, I would look at free stock image sites. Your Unsplash and your Pexels are great for real life photography that's pretty modern. And it's stuff that you could mess with, or Photo Bash, which I'll talk about in a second. But Wikimedia Commons is really great for getting some public domain art, and a lot of that can be drawings or paintings that don't take a lot to mess with, to where it looks cool and might fit like a fantasy vibe or whatever you're going for. So these are kind of places that I start. We have an adventure that we were just working on. Is it up?
I think so.
Okay, the Hamlet Witch is an adventure we were literally laying out this morning and finishing up. It is up on our itch site, probably. Might be tonight.
No guarantees. It might be later.
But the cover image is a Wikimedia Commons image that I used too, because we were running out of time, and it looked great. So those are great places to start. And so I was talking about with photo bashing, you can see this guy took a stock image, then took another stock image, and by adding noise and grain to this photo, by the end, it ends up looking like an illustration that someone drew, when it's really some very minimal photo editing stuff. Now, you'll see this is in Photoshop, but there's a free program out there called GIMP that any Photoshop tutorial will directly translate to GIMP. GIMP is pretty much a copy of Photoshop, but it's free. So photo bashing is an awesome way to be able to make art where you can't draw, so what? You go on ahead and smash some photos together and add a little bit of a noise texture on top, and you're off to the races. That thing could definitely be in anybody's adventure tomorrow as some kind of crazy muscle frog attacking you.
Nate, weren't you saying, like, museums usually?
Yeah. So if you're looking for like a lot of art, right? You know, Wikimedia Commons is a really great option. The Metropolitan Museum of Art also has just like almost hundreds of thousands of like pots and paintings and drawings from like, you know, the 400s AD to now, and it's like you can just pick, and you can even filter it down to public access, which means you can use it in your products. It's, you know, in the public domain, it's free to use. And I did that for a lot of my illustrations in my book. I just like picked a cool, you know, thing of Pompeii or whatever, and just like make it look a little bit more illustrative. And like
really big library systems too have digital archives that have that. So I would look at like your New York Public Library, things like that.
Yeah.
They have a lot of maps, which might be cool. If that's something you want to say, hey, I want to trace over an old map, might be cool. All right. Another choice that people are really liking to use these days is AI. So the question is, to AI or not to AI? We're not going to like make any kind of hardline stance. We know that it's controversial. We would say, if you're going to charge for your thing, pay an artist. This is a community thing where you've probably benefited from other people putting stuff out there. So lift other people up with you if you're going to make some money. If you're making stuff for your home table and you want to use AI, like no one's going to fault you for that. We get it. But as often as you can, pay an artist. That would be where we default to. As far as like writing with AI tools, they could be a great starting point to just get you over the hurdle. But don't ever end up with like a direct verbatim AI thing. Put your own stamp on it, even if it's not perfect or it's a little sloppy. It coming from you is always better than it just being an AI thing. So,
you know what? I've used AI a few times. It's pretty nice to like, hey, can you give me 6, creative writing prompts? It's just randomly generated at that point, but you can get something a little different than having to search forever on Google for good prompts.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to do is like just hop on like ChatGPT and like just throw something and say like, make it weirder, make it weirder, make it like over and over and over again, and it's just like a wizard comes from back in time, and he's actually from the future, and now he's trying to kill this frog, and you're like, okay, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And then just tweak it from there, obviously.
Sometimes that like the fear of the blank page and that empty starting point can be what's holding you back, and ChatGPT can get you over that, and now you've got enough to work with where you can make it your own, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's fine, but let's move past it. But again, put your own stamp on it. That's what will always be better than someone who just prints out something directly from ChatGPT. Okay, so now you're kind of getting your layout and everything's working well. This is like the really nitty-gritty, nerdy stuff. Some of this stuff is find that software package that you know how to use and then go back and look up how to do this stuff later. So when you're going to format, like you were talking about, how do you bridge that gap between print and digital? That zine size, that the pages are 8.5 by 5.5, but a spread is 8.5 by 11, works really well for in print and on the computer, because it's nice to be able to just have it lay out in front of you on the table, but then it's widescreen like your laptop or your iPad's going to be. So a lot of people find that that works. But what I would do is, what we do is we do that zine size and we offer the ability for it to be single pages and then also another format that lets you have spreads. And then we make sure we put links on the table of contents so you could go and, again, this is a tool for people to reference while they're running. And all of these software packages, you Google how to add a link. It's easy. So yeah, we really like to do that. But if you're going to offer anything printable, like a map for the players to use, we'd recommend that 8.5 by 11 and an A4 size, because there's a lot of European players out there downloading adventures. We find a lot of European folks that we end up talking to when we are on Discord or Reddit talking about these adventures. So kind of making sure that that A4 size is available for print works too. The 8.5 by 5.5 zine with spreads works for them for a lot of times they'll end up playing digital. And you could make an A4 format. I would say it's more important for printing. A lot of people are playing online, or even if they're in person, they're keeping it on their computer. So I wouldn't say you have to have the A4 for the booklet or the main adventure also.
We'll talk about like virtual tabletops if you're familiar with like Roll20 or D&D Beyond or something like that. We'll talk about that once we get to the
Yeah, this kind of section is really about the
crafting it.
Yeah,
getting it.
So we'll get to that. So then, print ready. If you're going to take this to print or you ever want it to get to print, these are the things a printer is going to ask of you. So just start off by having these ready to go. So your images at 300 DPI. You want to have CMYK color space. You want to export with crop marks and bleed zones if you have full bleed. Again, this is probably a lot. If you've never done this, Google how to use it with your software package, because every package is going to be different on how you do this. And this is kind of its own little web. But this is a good starting point if you really care about sending something into print to know how to go forward. The big thing here, though, with no matter how you're going to do this, is when you're done making and crafting everything, packaging up your adventure and all your files in one spot so you can reference it is a huge deal. Sometimes you get stuff in your downloads folder and it's in that version all over your computer. You want to have everything where you can find it again, because you're probably going to make a couple versions of this because you're going to go ahead and edit it. So
you don't want to end up like this.
So you don't want to end up with continuing to name things final. You want to have versions and use like version 1, version 2. So then you can go back and someone goes, I was editing with you in version 2, really slapped, and I thought version 3 missed something. Let's go back to that. So keep things versioned out would be really a good idea. And then I don't know if anyone else here was from the panel before, but the panel before us, they were talking about that editing component. Once you write something, you're going to want to have somebody else look at it. The general rule of thumb is never put anything out in the world that hasn't had at least 2 sets of eyes on it. You'll miss so many things just because you were too close to it.
And that can just be a friend. You don't have to be like, I got to find an editor. Like, you could just be like, hey, Mom, read this. And she'll be like, okay, great.
Yeah. So one of our new kind of rules is we like to make system neutral or system agnostic adventures, but a lot of times you'll find that people gravitate towards you doing the work for them. They don't want that. They want something made for a system. So the people who are playing that system, they have Discord servers. They have Reddit subreddits. Go put your adventure on there and say, hey, does anybody want to proofread this? How would you think this would run in the system? I did that for a Morkborg adventure, and someone was like, wow, you're going to kill your players with the first monster they encounter. And I was like, I'm okay with that. Cool. But it was good to know. So yeah, you're going to want to edit. We don't always play test everything. It's probably better to.
A little bit. Just a tiny bit.
You don't have to, but we recommend it. It's a good way to go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of okay, you've got your idea. Now you've got it in a format another person could digest it, and hopefully it's edited nicely and you've play tested. What do you do next, Nate?
Well, hopefully you make money. That's kind of the purpose of certainly some reasons why you would want to make an adventure. And there's a lot of opportunities for you to put your adventures in places and make money off of it. But kind of more important is at the very beginning of the process, once you get your adventure like written out, you've got it in an InDesign file or even a Microsoft Word file or whatever. And you're like, well, okay, great, I'm done. What do I do now? It's important to sort of determine whether you want to just like give this to people, because that, give back to the community that gave to you, right? Like kind of create that sort of feedback, that community. That is also super important. If you want to just create a link and throw it on Reddit, that is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to make money off of it, however, there's probably other opportunities that you would want to do instead of just posting it and saying, my adventure, come look at it. And that's really kind of two different circumstances that you would find yourself in if you're trying to sell your stuff, which is direct sales and crowdfunding. And these are different, but there's opportunities that you might want to use both of them together. And I'll explain that as we go forward. But first of all, direct sales, this is the most typical sort of experience that you would have, right? You go someplace, you buy an adventure, you have the adventure done. That's a direct sale. The most popular places are DriveThruRPG, itch.io. Those are two places on the internet that are both super popular. They have all of the big names. You can buy D&D adventures. You can buy all sorts of different kinds of things. Speaking of D&D, if you want to make D&D adventures, let's say you play the world's most popular role-playing game, you can definitely make adventures in that system, and you could use the Dungeon Masters Guild, for example, which is a Wizards of the Coast, aligned thing, and they let you use their IP. So you could make an adventure in the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or Ravenloft or Magic the Gathering settings, stuff like that. The kind of trade-off with that is that they take a bigger cut of your sale, right? Because they're giving you the tools that you normally wouldn't have. Also, another part of it is that if you sell on there, you can't sell anywhere else because IP. So there's also Indie Press Revolution, and then, of course, you could just make your own website and sell it on your own website with PayPal or whatever. That being said, there are other opportunities for monetization. You could do crowdfunding. So if you got an idea and you think it's really cool and you think other people would be interested in it, but you don't want to spend 100 hours and say, I hope everybody likes it, and then nobody likes it, like, awesome, I wasted all my time. You can kind of get the idea first, get some images, get some layout, get some things that look really nice, and you've got the idea sort of rock solid in your head. Make a campaign page on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and say, hey, who's interested in this thing? My goal is $500, $1,000, $20,000, whatever it ends up being.
$20 million.
$20 million. Hey, maybe you're the next Brandon Sanderson. I don't know. You could be, right? But you get your campaign idea up there, and then you start advertising that part of it. And then people can come and throw money at you before you invest all that time and effort. Because if you find out after 20 days or 30 days that, hey, nobody actually is interested in this particular thing, well, despite the heartbreak that you might have, the other part of that is that, well, hey, good thing I didn't waste 200 hours working on a thing that nobody likes. So there's also Patreon and Coffee, which is kind of it's sort of crowdfunding, but it's a little bit different in the sense that people are supporting you specifically or a particular product line that you like or you make or something like that, rather than like a specific product that you make. So, I have a Patreon that is not super successful because I have a lot of things going on all the time and I forget. But one way that you can kind of get people to get over onto those platforms is if you have a lot of material, you're already making a lot of adventures, let's say 2 years from this, panel, and you're like, oh, I've been making 1,000 adventures, Nate, Colin, and Chuck. Thank you so much. That's not going to happen, but I'm not going to delude myself into pretending that's real. But you could have a bunch of adventures that are, available on different platforms, and you have a name for yourself, a reputation, and you can say, hey, I'm starting a Patreon, $5 for you to throw at me. That kind of keeps me afloat. It helps me do some stuff. And then you could just kind of make a passive income that way with fans of yours who really like your work and just want to support you. That's an absolutely valid way to make money without maybe necessarily making adventures all the time. But how does that implement into things like virtual tabletops, right? Because crowdfunding doesn't really work in that aspect, and VTTs have direct sales in them, but they're a completely different beast. So these are kind of a smattering of virtual tabletops that you can choose from. The one thing that you kind of have to keep in mind with these is that someone has to code it. You can't just be like, oh, here's my PDF, because that doesn't really translate. So you want to have a developer or somebody. There's plenty of Discords. There's a Roll20 Discord. There's a Foundry Discord. All sorts of different forums where people are like, adventure designers, but only in the digital space. They develop the code to get your thing converted into one of these platforms. So look at those places, take a look at there, and then see if that, they do generally charge because they are developers and it's expensive to convert text to code, but that's absolutely one direction that you can go in. Not that you have to do that, because you absolutely can just take a PDF and then just get the free version of Roll20 and be like, oh, great, gray map, I'm just drawing squares and telling you where it is. So how much do you charge for all this stuff? That's kind of the big question. And when I was in school for graphic design, that was one of the biggest questions was, well, how much do I charge the client? And every professor was super cagey about it because money is uncomfortable. People don't like talking about it. And they say, oh, well, and you're like, tell me how much I need to charge for this, please. So really, we can break it down into like 3 categories. And don't look at this necessarily as like, oh, I should pick 5 and ignore the rest. Some adventures you might write might be 7 pages long. Okay, maybe they're in this range. Some adventures you might write, they're 100 pages long. Maybe they're in this range. Some adventures you write, maybe you want to make it a beautiful hardcover book with the ribbon and the Smithsonian binding and all the other bells and whistles. You definitely want to be in this category. So
You won't have a choice, otherwise
otherwise you will not make money. Exactly, because there's all sorts of pricing that go into that. But yeah, so 3 categories, low, medium, high. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like if you're offering it for free, that's low. If you're offering it for $20 or more, that's kind of the high range. Most people don't. I've found in my experience that most people find things that are like in the $10 and up range to be kind of like, okay, this is not the price of a coffee. This is the price of like a game. So those people want the bang for their buck. They don't want to spend $10 and find out that you wrote 5 pages of things from ChatGPT because they're like, well, I could have done that. But like I said before, print and hardcover should almost always be in this range because as somebody who printed a book and sold it and had all that stuff and counted out all the price points and everything, it costs $2 to $3 to print the book, one book. It costs anywhere between $3 and $15 to ship the book, right? If you're shipping it to like the UK, for example, that's $15 right there just for one book. So all of a sudden it costs $20 to just make the book, let alone sell the book. So if you're selling the book for $10 and it costs you $20 to ship the book, I'm not a math magician, but I don't think that really counts up very well. So you really want to try to figure out what your price point is. And like I said, you can mix and match. You might have a suite of adventures that are free. You might write like quick and dirty sort of things, system agnostic adventures that you're like, we're really kind of writing in a more narrative style as opposed to saying, here's your stat blocks, here's your magic items, here's all the rules. So you might have something that's free and you might have a whole suite of that stuff. Maybe you offer all your free stuff as a part of your Patreon while simultaneously offering, your more kind of bigger things that you hired an artist from the Comic-Con, from the Artist Alley. Maybe you have something that's a little bit more robust and you're selling that for the $10 to $20 range on Drive-Thru RPG. There's no real reason why you have to stick in one bucket and not go elsewhere. But, find the pricing that works for you. It will take some experimentation. You're probably not going to get it right the first time. And if you do, you should call me because I would like to know how that works. But all that's great. You get everything all settled up. You got the pricing. You got the adventure written. You got all that good stuff, and then you're like, great. Post it on Drive-Thru RPG. 4 months goes by. You make 2 sales. How do you market this thing? How do you get this thing into the place or into the hands of people, or get their eyes on it so that they're excited to play it, buy it, so on and so forth? Colin's going to talk a little bit about that. I'm sure we'll all interject.
Yes. So yeah, you want to let people know about what you've done. And normally a lot of people think, okay, we're going to go to social media or wherever. That's not the first place you want to start. Wherever your landing page is, whether it's your website, it's your itch page, it's the VTT page, whatever, that is the place where you need to really spend a lot of time making sure that you get someone to click that download or that buy button. So having good graphics, showing them what they're going to be getting themselves into, having a really great synopsis, making it readable so it's not just a wall of text. This is a page that we did. We also had for this adventure a video, so people could even check out what the adventure's like before they download it. Making your landing page slap is like the first step, because everything else is going to funnel people here. So you want this to be really good. Some adventures die because the landing page is half-assed. And even if you did great marketing getting people there, they look at it and they go, oh, you didn't care even about the landing page. You spent all your time on the adventure. Spend that much time on your landing page.
We're all primates, right? We see shiny, we think good. Really, once you start to see things and you're like, oh, that looks really nice. I can't explain why, but I feel compelled to buy this thing. That looks really nice. You see something that's like a stack of Microsoft Word copy paper, staple bound.
Is that going to be good?
Is that too much? Right? Like, it's
You could use Microsoft Word copy paper if it looks awesome. Like you could do it cheap, but you still have to be really intentional about it.
Right.
You could share online in all the places that we know that people are at. I would look at where people are already talking, or you've already been talking to people about things. A lot of games have their own Discord server. Morkborg's Discord server is amazing, and the community of people on there are making stuff together all the time. It's really cool. Subreddits for games. And we're talking like go to the specific game is a great way to get people to actually notice your thing. You've got subreddits and Discord servers that are about TTRPGs or RPGs in general, and those are good to go talk there. But if you can be a part of a community of people who care about a particular game, you get seen way quicker and faster. And like that's the other part of it too. If you just show up and you're like, hey, here's my thing right away, and you've never participated in any of these places that are community places, that's obnoxious. Don't do that. Actually,
would be excited if somebody walked in the door and said, hey, does anybody want to buy my new thing?
yeah.
No, thank you. We're actually getting a panel here.
Right. And like that's part of it too is people, even if you're going to talk about your thing, not always doing a, hey, I made a thing post, but maybe talk about some of the challenges you overcame while you were making that thing. Maybe you learned a new tool for making maps in your thing, and you can say, hey, I just wanted to share dungeonscrawl.com because it really saved my bacon when I was making this new adventure. And then you can link to your adventure along with it. So you can say, go check it out too. And if it's like a free thing, they'll definitely click on it. So can you think about that participation in communities and giving something back? You can talk about your stuff, but give something back at the same time. Usually it'll fall flat if you're only trying to sell stuff all the time. Another thing is come to places like cons, which you've already committed to doing that. You're here today. So
Step one complete.
bring your own little business card. Nate was really great. Every person that forced a business card on him, he put one right back in their hand. It was wonderful. Feel free to do that. That's what everyone is here doing that you're walking by. Bring.
Great Uno reverse card.
Yeah. It's really easy. It's really these are not printed by a printer. You know you can buy the Avery labels and get those. Do stuff like that, but go to places in real life where other people are hanging out and doing this. Take care, you guys. Go to your friendly local game store and see if they'll have your adventure there. You talked to Fanfare, and they were willing to put your book in there, really without any hemming or hawing. They were like, okay, sure. There wasn't any proving of himself. Right? So there are people in this community that care about it. So yeah, that's all I've got on that one. It's a slim section, but that basically participate where people already care. That's really what you got to know and make your landing page slap.
And, what's nice too is when you participate in those communities. Discord and Reddit, I think, are the most active. You could throw things into Instagram and things like that, but I think people are more just kind of like wanting to see shiny stuff there, and it's a quick glance and they move on.
The dice makers have overrun TikTok and Instagram with.
Don't get me wrong, I love it. I scroll it all the time.
Yeah, but people are really just like, ooh, new dice.
Discord and Reddit are really great for actually interacting with the community. And like he was saying, you know, don't just pitch and try to sell your stuff. Hey, share what you figured out while you were writing, while you were creating, while you were formatting, or, you know, finding an illustrator. Share that with other people. Those are free things that you can share to help the community. And I promise the community will be just as supportive and helpful in like giving that stuff back to you to help you create and continue doing what you're doing. It's really one of the best things I think about the TTRPG community. So
just let the haters roll off. There's always gonna be somebody in there with actually. Just gonna be like, let the keyboard warriors duke it out, and then just like cut through it to like the people who are like, you know, support you and like are interested in your thing, or ask you questions, and then always, you know, kind of go off of that. I think that's a really great way to kind of engage, and then be interested in other people's stuff. That's another big part of it. Don't just be like sell, 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 sell. Like Colin said, you want to kind of engage with people and make sure that you know you are putting in what you're hoping to take out. Yeah.
Well, like another, even if you are going to just post a, hey, here's my thing that I made and I'm really excited about it. One of the things we like to do is go and like, look, let's say I put out a Morkborg adventure today. I'll go and make my post, and then I'll go look up the Morkborg hashtag and see who's posted about that today. And I will go and leave a genuine comment about their post that has nothing to, I'm not saying go look at my post. I'm just saying, oh, wow, I really like how you did that. And I'll do that on, I'll just say 5 people or 10 people. And then they end up clicking, going, oh, who is this? And then they see our thing inevitably. But I wasn't just asking them to come look at my thing. So it's kind of another way every time you post anything, go engage with people on the topic you're talking about, and they'll come back and find you. And it's an easy way to kind of make sure your post gets traction right away too. But then again, like you're forcing yourself to go and be a part of the community. That's a really quantifiable way to do it. Okay, I'm gonna leave 5 comments today. I can do that.
That's super dangerous though, because if you're already like, oh, I'm gonna write an adventure, then you're probably somebody who's like, I'm gonna buy an adventure. So like if you go on Instagram or whatever and you start talking to people, you're gonna be like, oh man, this looks really fucking cool.
Nate and I have like maybe 80 adventures or systems that we've bought this year alone on like Kickstarter and Itch because we get trapped and we'll never ever get to play all the games we own.
Yeah, cons are the worst because you go and you see so much stuff and you're like, my wallet. You gotta like hide your wallet in your car so you at least have like a walk to think about it. And then you come back and you're like, oh, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And you see another Creeply or whatever, and you're like, whoa.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so when you're GMing, like for me, I have like so many ideas in my noggin,
Yes.
but a lot of times I have a hard time like trying to convey that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get blanks and stuff. You know?
I mean, yeah.
I was gonna say, when I find myself in that position, right, you're like, you know you want to go somewhere, but you just can't bring those words. If you have some sort of prompt for your characters, let them, like, give it to them for a minute, let them role play or figure something out that doesn't require your input, and you can, like, stop and collect yourself or write down some notes. What am I trying to say? Okay, I need to get this point across, I need them to go here, I need them to know this. Okay. Have you all figured out what you're wearing to the ball? Or whatever, you know, the prompt that you just gave them. Okay, great.
Hey,
now let's get going.
Now I know you were just killing time when you said that to us last time. Yeah, but I think there's 2 things about that. One, I have the problem of you've got that list of all the cool things you planned, and they're not getting anywhere near that trap. But come on, go down that hallway. I want you to that trap. And you're stuck in your head with that. But they're having the game they want to have right there in front of you. So the one side of it is go, let it go. Look at your players. If they're having the game they want to have, then you're killing it. You're doing great. And then the other part of that is even some like simple tools like how you format things. Like this is where I get nerdy about like layout design and how helpful it can be. Like if you have 50 bullets that are all different traps, and it's like you have to read the whole paragraph to be able to know which trap it is. Like give a 1-word heading above each bullet so that way you can quickly reference and find it. Sometimes it's as simple as just organize your ideas and kind of group them and go, it's okay if I don't get to all of them, but maybe I make it easier on myself to reach in and grab that right away. So I'm not reading notes, but I've got it formatted in a way that helps.
Oh,
I was gonna say, I think that's what led me to wanting to make my own adventures. I don't like running modules in the first place. I always like improvising and making my own stories, but everyone I play with always goes off key.
Yes.
But I realized if I make the adventures, maybe eventually someone down the line will actually be able to fulfill the thing I wrote in 20 years. Someone will pull it out of the dust, and they'll actually get their group to walk down that alley and fall for the trap.
Right.
I'll never know about it, but maybe one day that'll actually.
Right, yeah. The hope and desire lives in your heart. Yeah.
Someone else
Yeah.
will do it.
That is the hardest thing as a GM or a writer, though. Is we have these ideas, these thoughts, we're like, this would be amazing, and we want our players to experience that. But you have to remember, like, this is cooperative, character building and storytelling and character development. So you have to give them as much autonomy as possible so that they can make their adventure. Like Hans, he's right. If the players are having fun, the GM or the writer, the DM is doing their job and is doing it well. But it definitely can be a little heartbreaking.
Also, just allow yourself one railroaded game, Pick one. What's the one thing? And be like, no, actually, this thing plucks you out of the sky and throws you into it. There you go.
That's that's one of the biggest. People get kind of like on their spinning their wheels, right? You gotta like open up the scene, you have all of it planned out and everything, and the players spend 45 minutes talking about what drink they're gonna buy, and you're like, please stop talking about this. We have to go to the mysterious stranger in the corner. One of the best advice things I've ever received is like when something is not really going anywhere, the pacing is sort of slowing down and everything, the best thing to do is put a gun on the table. Like, seriously, if the mysterious stranger is not getting talked to, have the mysterious stranger pull out a gun. Right? Now all of a sudden, things are much more important about talking to the mysterious stranger because he's the most dangerous person in the room. And you can obviously do that in different ways as well. You can have a social scene at a ball or something where everyone's kind of just chattering about, oh, isn't the flambe delicious? And you're like, oh my god, I don't care about that. I want to get like the prince to, do the thing. Right? You just have the prince stand up, clutch his throat, falls over dead. Right? Just throw it out there, And like honestly, if you allow yourself to have the feeling that you are capable. You sat down, you brought this group of people together, they decided to trust you to run a game. You have already done the hard work. Now you just kind of have to just feed it, and a really great way to kind of buy some time is sort of like what they said, and say get a very serious look on your face, roll a die. It doesn't matter what die, just roll it, and just roll behind your table. How do your characters feel about this one? Don't go on 40 minutes. Just let them talk. Just,
gather your thoughts. Put together
just buy the time that you have to by asking the players questions, and even the quiet ones will sometimes be like, they'll surprise you. They'll come up and they'll say, my character actually is thinking about their hometown. That's the most words he said in 4 sessions.
Yeah.
There's
Any more questions?
Actually, just another statement that
Sure.
I ran into. The players don't know what you have planned at all.
right.
So if you're like, they have to go east to this mountain to go to this dungeon, and they go west, move the dungeon west.
Yeah.
They don't need to know the dungeon was in the
Yes.
east. And I ran into that issue where it's like, you want to railroad them over to that mountain, that's where everything's taking place, and you're fixated on getting there. No, just move everything over there. The trap's down that hallway, they went down the other one. Well, the trap's now on that hallway. They didn't need to know that.
I was going to say, too, that having a more vague approach to what you've planned, that you could just reach your pocket. Famously, Nate was running an adventure for us, and there was a monster in this place. It was Mothership. And he didn't have the monster is in this room on the map. He had the monster's going to show up when the monster needs to show up.
Yeah. Monster's going to show up when things start getting boring.
Yeah.
Monster's
So
going to kill someone.
some of it is just don't plan so much. You don't have to have every detail nailed down. Does it feel like we need a monster right now? Okay, we probably need a monster right now. Does it feel like this session needs to end? Okay, then let's hit the gas. It doesn't matter what you planned. And some of that, we were writing dialogue for what the GM's going to say. And we ended up cutting it in half and go, okay, here's some things the GM could offer, but let's see what happens at the table and give the GM the ability to do that. So even don't plan a full page of text that you're going to read out to be very eloquent to your players. say one little block and then have some things that you can use to dialogue with your players. You don't have to write everything out. You don't have to plan everything out. The magic is when you've just got your bullet point of like, oh yeah, he could offer them some gold, but let's see what they want to ask for in exchange.
Right.
Sometimes they might surprise you with what they want, and that's a much more interesting dynamic than I was going to offer you 50 gold pieces. You know what I mean?
I'm like, we'll do it for, we want 10 gold pieces now. So,
If you can't make a decision and you like there's 50 different decisions, make a list and just roll the dice.
oh,
There's
yeah.
50 different options I could roll, or 100 different options. Let's just roll D100. That's the one they choose. You don't gotta make a decision anymore. Just let the dice decide.
Yeah. He saw a giant
Solid
metal.
D100. It's like a pound. And I was like,
See, this is why we left his wallet in the car.
yeah.
All right, any more questions or statements? Well, thank you guys for coming and listening to us. Check us out. We've got if you want to have access to those links, we've got some cards and stickers. We have actual plays that are also as podcasts online if you want to